So this is the 10th year of Media and Democracy Days, and I remember that we've done a panel like this in the past, of future of journalism. And so the first question, that comes up for me in moderating this panel is, has the future arrived? Or is the future still in the distance? And what is the future? And why are we talking about this in 2011? Why now? And we're going to have the next hour plus to explore those questions with some of the leaders in Vancouver's media scene. So I'm Linda Solomon, founder and publisher of the Vancouver Observer. And our panelists today are Karen Pynchon, who's the founding editor of Open File, Vancouver, and Charlie Smith, who's the editor-in-chief of Georgia Strait, one of Vancouver's oldest and award-winning publications that has been an alternative voice since 1965? 1967. And David Beers, founding editor of the Tyee, and Peter Klein of UBC Journalism's International Reporting Institute. We're pretty close. International Reporting Program. And I'll say more about everybody as I introduce them specifically. But I just want to say a few things about the future of journalism, or perhaps the present in journalism. What comes up for me in thinking about it are that corporate control of news media in Canada, unfortunately in the last 10 years, rather than decreasing, has increased. The Pew Report published a report on the state of journalism in 2010 that said that in 1990, 17.3% of daily newspapers were independently owned, and in 2005, 1% were. And as Donald Gutstein wrote on Friday in the Vancouver Observer, Canadian news coverage and commentary is more conservative than it was 5 years ago, and just as concentrated. At the end of his well-researched and substantial analysis, we got this comment: "Congratulations, you've done a wonderful job of shilling for the CBC, which is funded by the taxpayer to the tune of $1.1 billion per year, to compete with the privately owned media, which must fund itself. The CBC has been sucking on the national treasury for 75 years to, quote, fulfill a 1937 mandate, which is of no importance or significance in 2011. So that's the kind of backlash out there, and conservative movement to cut the CBC, representative of. Another good reason we need to really think about the crisis in media, I think, was summed up in the words of Amy Goodman, who said, when you look at the corporate network, so often you see a small circle of pundits who know so little about so much, explaining the world to us, and so often getting it wrong. And finally, I'd like to add that gender balance is still a real problem in the media. BBC reported last June that less than a third of top management positions in the media are held by women. So we have a lot of problems, but in this, the problems are really also a call to action and huge opportunity for creativity in solving these problems. And so that's what I think our panel today is all about and has been doing. And so I'd like to start by introducing David Beers.
It's a real honor to be up here on this panel with these great journalists, all four of my colleagues here. So I'll be I think I might stick to, after Judy Rebick, I think it's best to stick to the practicalities, because she covered the inspiration very well, I thought. The Tyee's been around for 8 years, and so, and I just checked the other day, and we've had about 40 million page views in that time, about 20 million visits. So we've performed service as a journalism outlet, clearly. And yet, and as Judy pointed out, the independent media scene and technology and culture has evolved tremendously. And yet here we find ourselves asking about the future of journalism. And I have to say, the way it feels to me still, 8 years on, is that every day the Tyee and sort of people that I see as swimming along with us in independent media, I feel like every day we're just edging our way forward without any clear map at all. And frankly, the terrain is getting more rather than less treacherous for people who want to start up publications like the Tyee. So that sounds really a bit sad and negative, and by the time I'm done it won't be so much so, because I want to talk a little bit towards a figure, and that figure is 10 cents. 10 cents a visit, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a bit. But the reason that I say that the terrain is gotten a bit treacherous lately is with the demise of Public Eye. Public Eye was a fantastic experiment, as old as Ravel and the Tyee, and it was Sean Holman, who's a brilliant investigative reporter, and he was using the power of the internet, the fact that you don't need a printing press and you can reach everybody. That allowed him to bypass capital, the fact that capitalists and capitalist publishers determine what can be published. So he was a shining beacon, an example of what could be done with the internet 8 years ago. And he went out of business last week. And he did that having won a Webster Award and brought down politicians and broken endless numbers of stories that the rest of the corporate media would pounce on and publish itself with rarely giving him any credit. So he's gone, and hopefully he'll be back. But what he was doing at Public Eye was basically going around to powerful people of all political persuasions and continuously poking them in the eye. That was basically what he was doing. And that's what investigative political reporters do. He didn't, Sean, if you knew Sean, he did not come from a political, ideological point of view. He didn't have a natural community of supporters who shared his, quote, values, unless you just thought keeping politicians honest was a value set in itself. So the problem I think we saw with the demise of Sean Holman is that in the end he wasn't part of a community, he was alone. And he would say this himself. Sean and I are good friends, so I'm not criticizing him, I'm actually reflecting what he would say. That he was alone in the end, and that he and that not enough people saw what he did as a social good, enough to pay for it. Nor did they see it as a personal consumable to know about what politicians were up to, what corrupt things they're up to lately. So we have the demise of Sean Holman's Public Eye. We also have the sale of the Huffington Post for $315 million to AOL this year. So that was done. Here's some facts about HuffPost. It started with $37 million in private investment, and it was a private company. Arianna Huffington had access to capital. She was once married to an incredibly wealthy right-wing guy who ran for governor of California, but she caught religion and she went progressive and she raised $37 million. The lesson there is that, for me, is that Huffington Post was a community of values. It was a progressive publication. Its point of view was distinct, and in the U.S. context, it's basically a left-wing Democrat Party publication. So what that demonstrated is that that community of values was viable, and it was even viable enough to be a corporate buy. Lesson 2 is that serious investment is needed to create a real force on the internet. $37 million might seem like a lot of money to you, but Conrad Black, in this much smaller country, decided he wanted to shift the debate, and he decided he would lose $10 million a year for as long as it took. All right, that's what he was losing on the Post. And when he went to jail, other people took up his project, I don't think it makes any money still. So the problem with Huffington Post is it's a moneymaker, but it's built on a model that doesn't pay writers. And this to me is the big problem. This is why the terrain is so treacherous ahead of us, is we haven't figured out how to pay writers in these new independent media models that rely on the internet and take advantage of the internet. So I want to just talk really quickly about the Tyee. I know I'm probably going over a bit, but I'll go fast now. The Tyee is a regional publication in a nation much smaller than the United States. Like the Huffington Post, we're a publication whose journalism arises from some explicit values. And in our case, most stories begin with questions about how to make the world, and particularly this part of the world, more socially just and sustainable. And those aren't really radical propositions, but they aren't the main questions that most corporate media start with every day. We, unlike the Huffington Post, have paid our contributors from the beginning. And we continuously are moving towards a model where we can provide our admittedly small team of writers a livelihood. If you go to the Tyee, you'll see people sitting in desks and they're writing and they make enough money to have a life. There aren't very many of them, but that's a very different model than having a select pot of money, big or small, and doling it out in $100 amounts to freelancers pitted against each other. So to me it's important that the Tyee 8 years on is at least providing some writers a livelihood, and we are. Our investors have put nothing remotely close to $37 million into the Tyee, but they have invested significantly more in the Tyee than probably anybody else has invested in any other alternative independent news site in Canada. I'll have to ask Judy how much money went into Rebel, but and what they've done that's very different from Huffington Post is our investors have said if the Tyee were to miraculously ever make any money, and we're not doing that yet, the money would immediately go into a nonprofit. So it's not a play. It's not a stock play. It's not an internet bubble concept the way Huffington Post is. It's very different. The way to measure our success, and I think this is the lesson going forward, is that the money that our investors put in every year yields more and more money in terms of other revenue sources. At the beginning, for every dollar they went in, no dollars came in. For every dollar they put in. We just spent the money on journalism. Now for every dollar that goes in, maybe 50 cents comes back in the form of either advertising or sponsorships or some other relationship. That means that our investors continue to invest, to lose money, but they consider it an investment. And we also publish some content through a philanthropic subsidiary called the Tyee Solutions Society, and we get great content from that, but that doesn't go to the Tyee's bottom line. So what I'm saying is, the future of the internet doesn't look, internet journalism, Tyee style, doesn't look that bright if 8 years on, our investors continue to lose money, even though the gap is closing. But it looks bright if you measure progress through traffic. Our traffic continues to grow by 10 or 20% a year. As I said, we've had 40 million page views. And so I did a calculation before I came here today. I looked at the number of people who came and visited the Tyee last month, and I looked at our shortfall between what revenues come in and how much it would take to break even on the Tyee, since that's all our investors want to do is break even. And I did a little division, and without giving away proprietary information about what gets invested in the Tyee and exactly how many people visit, here's what it came down to. For all the readers that come to the Tyee, because we draw readers from all over the world as well as BC, if every time someone visited, they paid 11 cents, we'd have broken even. We would be a sustainable, permanent fixture in the media landscape. 11 cents a visit. Now, a visit, you can look at 100 pages. I'm not counting page views, I'm counting just coming to the site. So let's say you come to the site once a day, just on weekdays. What is that? That's like, that's less than $3 a month. So then I broke it down. I'm like, yeah, but that's a lot of kids doing their homework in Orlando, Florida, and they accidentally find the Tyee because there's something about the pipeline or whatever. So let's get rid of all them and let's just look at people in British Columbia.